In recent years, woke culture has become a prevalent, often polarizing force. Initially intended to promote awareness and inclusion around issues of race, gender, and equality, it has sometimes evolved into a system critics argue resembles authoritarian practices when rigidly enforced. When legal or social mandates enforce woke culture, the effect can echo authoritarianism's rigid control, undermining open dialogue and free expression. This phenomenon contrasts sharply with the ideals of the five-stage model of socio-political development, which values free communication, persuasion, and voluntary adoption of values as markers of an advanced democratic society. Woke culture as a modern authoritarian practice. Though rooted in fostering inclusivity and social justice, woke culture can take on authoritarian qualities when enforced without room for dissent. Critics argue that when individuals or organizations face severe repercussions for failing to align with dominant narratives, whether through career-damaging accusations, social ostracism, or even legal penalties, the democratic ideal of free expression is eroded. Instead of open conversation, the ideology becomes about compliance, which can create a culture of fear, where individuals are reluctant to express genuine opinions, explore nuanced views, or engage in debate. According to the five-stage model, authoritarianism is marked by a top-down imposition of rules that suppress opposing perspectives. When woke culture is imposed in similar authoritarian ways, it stifles open discourse, mirroring Stage 1's approach to control and homogeny. This imposition suppresses individual voices and prevents society from genuinely exploring and internalizing values like inclusivity, transforming them into imposed standards rather than shared goals. The role of free communication in the five-stage model. The five-stage model suggests that a society's maturity is defined by how it addresses value conflicts. Rather than authoritarian enforcement, Stage 1, or legal mandates that may restrict personal freedoms, Stages 2 and 3, the model emphasizes free communication, voluntary adoption, and persuasion as markers of a mature society. Stage 4 and Stage 5 societies, representing democratic and collaborative cultures, respectively, rely on open discourse and respect for diverse perspectives. Here, values are adopted through collective understanding and choice rather than enforcement. In a democratic culture at Stage 4, individuals are encouraged to hold different beliefs and negotiate conflicting values. This requires a framework that supports free expression, allowing individuals to persuade each other rather than imposing a correct perspective. This approach encourages people to embrace inclusive values not out of fear but because they genuinely align with these principles. Stage 5 represents an even more evolved approach, where mutual respect and empathy guide responses to conflicting values. Instead of relying on mandates or forced compliance, a Stage 5 society allows people to find common ground through dialogue and understanding. This supports each person's right to make moral choices, fostering an environment where values are voluntarily embraced by the majority, not by force. Complexities of social justice movements and the necessity for direct action. Social justice movements often face the challenge of addressing deeply rooted inequalities accumulated over generations. While inclusivity and equality are positive goals, movements argue that voluntary adoption may be insufficient to dismantle systemic inequities. Structural injustices, like racial discrimination and gender inequality, are not always corrected by individual goodwill or gradual shifts. They sometimes require direct action, collective accountability, and, at times, enforceable measures. For instance, the civil rights movement in the U.S. achieved progress through advocacy and legislation, like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, which catalyzed changes that voluntary efforts alone could not have achieved in the same time frame. Advocates of woke culture argue that legal mandates can be necessary to create equitable opportunities. This approach is seen not as infringing on freedom but as a corrective to historical injustices that limit the autonomy and rights of marginalized groups. Recognizing this context strengthens the case for nuanced enforcement that addresses systemic change while respecting individual freedoms. Risks of social pressure as a coercive force. However, social pressure can also be misused, especially when it becomes a tool for enforcing conformity without room for dissent. In these cases, social pressure shifts from promoting values to punishing those who deviate from societal expectations, creating a culture of fear that suppresses individual expression. For instance, if social pressure around woke culture takes the form of public shaming, career consequences, or social ostracism for those with differing views, it can alienate individuals and breed resentment rather than understanding. This coercive application of social pressure risks stifling open dialogue, as individuals may avoid expressing genuine opinions for fear of backlash. Instead of fostering a culture of voluntary inclusivity, this approach mirrors authoritarian practices, where compliance is demanded rather than encouraged. It can also result in superficial adherence to values, where individuals act according to societal expectations out of fear rather than genuine commitment. Balancing social pressure with respect for autonomy. For social pressure to be ethically constructive, it must respect individual autonomy and avoid crossing into coercion. This balance is achieved when pressure is applied through awareness campaigns, public discourse, and educational initiatives rather than punitive or shaming tactics. For example, sustainability campaigns that highlight the benefits of eco-friendly choices empower individuals to participate in positive change voluntarily. Similarly, social movements that open conversations about inclusion and respect can help normalize these values without forcing immediate conformity. Constructive social pressure differs from coercion in its method and intent. It aims to inspire change rather than compel it. Campaigns that provide information and appeal to individuals' sense of social responsibility are more likely to encourage lasting change, as people adopt values by choice rather than under duress. When individuals feel free to question and discuss values openly, they are more likely to integrate them meaningfully, leading to genuine cultural shifts. Practical ways to achieve a balanced application of social pressure. A balanced approach to social pressure requires focusing on education, dialogue, and ethical persuasion. Social pressure should serve as a community reminder of shared values, encouraging individuals to engage and participate voluntarily. Practical ways to achieve this balance include educational campaigns. Social movements and institutions can use campaigns to raise awareness and educate people on issues like inclusivity, environmental sustainability, and ethical business practices. Providing factual information and showcasing the positive impact of certain behaviors enables people to make informed choices without feeling forced. Inclusive public discourse. Platforms for open discussion allow individuals to express their views, ask questions, and explore new perspectives without fear of backlash. By fostering a space for respectful dialogue, society can integrate diverse perspectives, leading to a more organic and deeply rooted cultural shift. Recognition of nuance. Recognizing that people may adopt values at different rates and to varying degrees is essential for constructive social pressure. Allowing for individual journeys toward inclusivity, sustainability, or other social ideals respects autonomy while encouraging gradual, voluntary change. Non-punitive accountability. Instead of shaming or punitive measures, accountability in social pressure can focus on constructive feedback, support for personal growth, and positive role modeling. When leaders and influencers model inclusive behavior, they set standards that others may choose to follow, reinforcing values through example rather than enforcement. Conclusion: balancing enforcement and voluntary adoption in a mature society. To foster a balanced approach that respects free expression while promoting inclusivity, societies and institutions can implement several practical strategies. The path to a mature society may involve multiple strategies to address value conflicts, each fitting specific historical and cultural contexts. Ultimately, the values of inclusivity and justice are fully realized when society advances beyond coercion to voluntary alignment, where people internalize these principles because they resonate with a shared sense of fairness and responsibility.